Chapter 1. The Stranger in the Rain, Part 1. The rain was harsh over the land, and the night was thick. A man in a hood burst out of a line of trees on a full white mount. Never had there ever existed a horse so pure white that it would blind if the moon hit him. Its fur was soaked by the rain, and as it came down the hill it let out a howl that shattered the night. They were still a large gap away from Elas village, or Elas city as the world had begun to call it. They stopped, and the man rubbed the animal's back and said, "Easy, Max. We should walk the rest of the way. We are close enough now that they would see us coming if we moved in like this." He dismounted the animal, and it began to shrink. Its paws turned into hands and feet, its snout into a nose, and its tail disappeared. It wasn't long before there was a young boy with white hair lying on the damp ground. The rider threw him a pair of pants and a trench coat with a hood to cover his head. The boy put on the clothes and then looked at the man who was looking at the city. He wondered why the man seemed so intense. "Samuel," called the boy over the rain. "What's wrong?" The man answered, "I haven't been here in a while. I can't wait to see them." "See who?" asked the boy. "Some old acquaintances," answered Samuel, and a smile creased his face. They stood by the lake known as the Dragonfly Lake. It was on the outskirts of the city. Then all of a sudden, Max felt something strange, a massive power surge filled with hatred and rage directed at them from the lake. Samuel looked to the lake, as did he. Max couldn't find words for a time. Then he asked, "Samuel, what was that?" Samuel looked away and asked, "What was what?" The night air was like a sheet of ice water rushing over his brown complexion, his eyes closing and opening. Every opening revealed umber irises. Even though his eyes were so dark, so serious, they were still managing to glint in the cold night air, like two small stars side by side. As he sat on the section of his roof right outside his window, he thought of the rain and not of anything important. No, it was important, it was. She was important. He felt for her. You see, he'd met a strange girl the other day. She was beautiful like his mother, but she was his age. He never knew that women, or rather, girls at her age, could look so appealing. He thought, sighed deeply. Never in his 16 years of life had he ever seen this. She was on the same level as most of the grown women in town. No, she was on a level all her own. She was tall and fit with nice legs that swept up to a climax with broad hips, then up even farther to a finely arched and slender back. Her hair was a dark shining black that caught the sun just right every time, almost like crow's feathers. Her skin and eyes were nice, light caramel colored. Her lips were nicely sized. While not full, they were still beautiful. Down her slender fine throat, her chest was far too developed for someone of her age, but then so was the rest of her body. Not large, just well developed. Not just in beauty was she gifted, but in her intelligence, she completely trumped Matthew at math and the sciences, and then took Jomo and Gregory down in language, history, and literature, scoring higher than all of them. But she didn't catch his attention until she matched him in combat practice. Her form was unbelievable in both hand-to-hand and sword practice. She was obviously well-rounded. Malik himself never focused on the forms. Instead, he chose to build his own way of fighting by using certain techniques and instinct. This all was fine and dandy until she began to show interest in getting to know him. She had been talking to him when no one else was around, told him about her family and the place she came from, the mighty continent of Abith. It was by far the largest landmass in western Camathea. Malik lived on an island to the southeast called Moorland, that used to be called Elas by the old tribes that used to dominate the Moorland Islands before they were colonized by the neighboring island of Lenorans. The locals were among some of the greatest assassins and fighters the known world had ever seen. They were known as the Maroons. They had a class of warrior so gifted at moving through the forest that they called them Dryads, named after wood spirits because of the way they fought against intruders in their own territories, as well as the fact that the Lenora warriors seemed to fear Dryad spirits. The fighting between the Lenorans and the Ilians went on for a long time. During the battles, a lot of the Ilian Maroons were enslaved and forced to work in the old Kestel town just south of Elas village. Eventually, both sides came to an understanding that fighting against each other would take them nowhere. And through this understanding, the peace treaty between the warriors and assassins of Ilas, led by the high chief of the tribes, who at the time was a woman called Nanny the Wise, and the king of Lenora, which was mostly a country that revolved around its trading and tourism. At the time, Lenora still answered to another country further out over the ocean to the east called Lagden. Lenora was forced into a mutually beneficial agreement, and eventually, through the Treaty of Civil Living, the village Aeolus was made. Over time it grew as cultures from all over the world would come to see its rare fruits and animals. Some stayed, and eventually the village became the largest town on the island. It later became a very advanced city with irrigation and a great wall that ran across the valley that it was into the northeast, and a seaport to its south, as it connected with Kestel town. This is where Malik lives. He likes it here, but he's always felt that people don't accept or like him, and it's strange the way it is, but he didn't know why. He had always been a little hyper, found it hard to stay on topic, but kind of funny too, and people that appreciate his humor flocked to him, but, as always, there were those who would just love to beat him up. Such is life, he thought. I guess my humor isn't what it used to be. The good news is that they stick to teasing me because of my abnormal size. Malik, came a voice from inside the windowsill. I bet you were thinking about Nell. I got something to tell you about her, by the way. Malik jerked back to reality, a little frightened. Jomo was still awake. Malik got to his feet to turn around. He was a full head taller than most children in the town that were his age. Okay, he said, shrugging his shoulder. She was waving at you, trying to call out, but it was like you were in another place or something. You just didn't see her. I figured she upset you, so I was gonna ask? He looked at Jomo for a long time before turning back around, but he didn't turn back completely. Malik paused there for a long time, taking in the scenery. For the first time, he didn't notice the stars, or the wind, or the cold, or the dark, or even that the rain had changed to a slight drizzle just a few minutes ago. I'm gonna go. It's getting late. Your clock says it's 7. I should be getting home now, man. Tell your mom bye for me. He stared at Malik for a time and then decided to go, after another moment of slightly awkward silence had passed. As he reached the room door, the silence was broken. Later, Jomo? Said Malik, still standing against the wind. Jomo closed the door behind him and went down the stairs to the front door. Malik's mother was sitting in a wide area filled with furniture and paintings. She was sitting on the far side of the room reading, a book by the light of the hearth, and a candle on a desk near her. She looked very much like a part of the background. She was surrounded by red wallpaper that covered the room almost to the floor, except for the polished brown wood border that was raised 9 inches off the floor and covered every corner of the room. She herself wore a bright red tube top like she usually did, and her brown short pants that could barely be seen behind the shawl around her waist. It had a strange symbol that repeated around the whole shawl right near the waist. It was a deep red that looked a bit more like brown, but it was closer to maroon. Jomo was yet to realize Veronica's presence. As he touched the doorknob, she flipped a page loudly, stopping him in his tracks. As he turned to the left facing her, she moved her legs down and crossed them the other way. It took only a few seconds. Then she looked up at him and smiled as if she hadn't noticed him. Walk safely, Jomo. Tell your mother I said hey. Thanks, Miss Cypress, said Jomo as he turned back to the door. Veronica turned the old pages of the book again. In the room's silence, it was as loud as a branch breaking from a tree. She licked her finger and turned one more time. One more thing. Jomo had his hand on the doorknob. Again he paused, looking from left to right, as if to say, Come on. Do you think you know what's wrong with Malik? He seems down. Well, the truth is, Auntie Vi, I think he likes this girl, but she is a part of this thing, said Jomo with a smirk. Does he really intend to spoil his relationship with Lihei so early? She said as she herself couldn't hold back a smirk. Jomo didn't find that funny. He simply finished his explanation. It's not Lihei, he continued. It's Nell. She marked the page she was reading and looked up at Jomo, her eyes glinting the same way Malik's eyes would in the given lighting, and she said, Who is that? Jomo, however, felt he had already said too much. He needed to move quickly. "It's getting late, Miss Sipe. Auntie V, I should get going," said Jomo as he quickly opened the door. "Walk safe," she shouted as it closed behind him. She shook her head and went right back to reading. She was hoping she would get the chance to know more about what went on in Malik's life. He didn't speak much about himself unless she confronted him about it, and that always led to an argument. The next best thing was when she had his friends over for breakfast on Saturday. She would hear all sorts of things over the table with her heightened sense of hearing, but still, it was very little. It was hard being a single parent, especially with a boy like Malik to look after. He liked very much to believe that he was independent, but if he only knew how much was put into keeping him safe, he wouldn't be so weird reckless. He wanted to be a part of the village guard force. If only he could take simple orders, that might be possible. His mother wished he would study more academic things, but he gets the will to fight from both sides of the family. His father is a great fighter, and his son is no pushover. Still, the boy's destiny would be different. He wouldn't have to fight the wars his father did, but there are still the people that search for them. The reason she gave up her new life was to protect her son from harm. To keep out of sight, it was what his father wanted, and she would do anything for him, even throw away a life of lavish living to raise his son. The darkness surrounded him, and he decided it was time to go back inside before he began to shiver. His mind ran on Jomo as he stepped through the window, and he turned to get to his bed on the left-hand side of the room. He and Jomo would hang out just for the sake of hanging out. There would be nothing to talk about nowadays, except some lame ruins of an ancient society that some archaeologists had dug up 1 year and a couple months ago. It was a really big deal at first, but then everything just got really hushed. By that I mean information just stopped coming from the mainland. Last Sunday, Malik took it upon himself to hit all the inns in town and see what the travelers that came from that way knew about the ruins. They say that the excavators found a treasure, or a container, or just a stone that...
Like and follow or subscribe for the next part and any other updates or lore.